This video is going to include spoilers for the Locked Circles class in Gloomhaven, so be warned. Hey Gloomers, welcome back to Nerdhaven. My name is Mike, and today I'm going to be showing you how to take your 3D miniatures at home and turn them into 3D models in Tabletop Simulator. And before we jump in, I just wanted to quickly say thanks to all of my subscribers. I just hit 250. I know that's not a lot, but you have to start somewhere. And if you're watching this video and you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. It'll help you be aware of anytime I post a new video, and it'll help others find my channel. This is the second video in a two-part series. In the last video, I showed you how I 3D printed and painted all of the summons for the Summoner class, and I'll have a link to that in the description if you haven't watched it already. In this video, I'm going to show you an incredible technology called Photogrammetry, which allows you to take pictures of an object from different angles, and it uses AI to reconstruct that object into a fully textured 3D model. This process can work for other games on Tabletop Simulator. The tutorial that I followed that I'm going to share with you isn't even specific to Gloomhaven. Before you can get started, there are a few things that you'll need. You need a camera, and ideally you'll have a DSLR or mirrorless camera. I didn't have one when I first did this, so I used my iPhone, and it actually worked pretty well. The quality of the final product wasn't quite as good as it could have been, but it worked fine. Some of the models, I had issues with the photogrammetry software using the pictures that I took on the iPhone. So I also had a pretty nice point and shoot camera that has a nice big lens, and I used that for those models, and it worked fine, and I was able to get all the models in between those two cameras. The second thing you'll need is a well-lit area, preferably with a cool light to avoid a yellow tint on your model. And if you have a light box, that'd be great. But if you don't have one, you can get away with a black sheet or a black pillowcase. Those will work to help bring the colors of your model out and contrast them from the background without any harsh edges or areas that might impact or reflect off the model when you're taking your pictures. The last thing you'll need is a turntable or Lazy Susan that you can put your mini on and slowly rotate around as you take pictures from different angles. This is important because it helps make sure that you get consistent lighting at every angle rather than trying to move the camera and move the lighting around the object every time you're going to take a new picture. The Dice from Hell website has another tutorial that walks you through how to build a turntable from scratch. This looks like it's going to be a long process if you do it, but the results are great, so if you have the time, you can feel free to go down this process. And included in this tutorial is a PDF that you can download and you can print, preferably on glossy photo paper, that gives you the right template to put your miniature in the middle of. And as you go around and take the pictures, it gives you great sightlines and angles, and it helps the photogrammetry software build the model. For me, I wanted to take advantage of that template, but I didn't want to go through the process of building this whole turntable. So I actually went to Amazon and I bought an 8-inch Lazy Susan turntable. It was less than $15. But I used the same template and glued it on top of that turntable, and it worked great. I'm not going to walk through each step of the tutorial. If you're interested in doing this yourself, you should really follow along with the website because you're going to need to pause often and read through what each setting does and optimize it to get the best results for your photos. But I will cover what's included in each part. It first talks about how to get the best camera settings and lighting set up in order to get the ideal photos for photogrammetry. It also has links to 3 software applications you'll need to install. The first is 3DF Zephyr, that's the photogrammetry program. The second is Blender, and the third is Unity Hub. 3DF Zephyr allows you to use up to 50 pictures to create a 3D model, and that's why the template that they give you has 25 equally distant angles. Because if you take them from one horizontal angle that's straight on at 25 different points, and then move your camera up a bit so that it's a little bit more top down, and then take 25 more pictures, you'll maximize your 50 pictures and you get some good variety in your angles to get the best possible 3D model outcome. Ideally, you're going to have a steady camera at a fixed location for each set of 25 pictures, so if you have a tripod, that would be ideal. If not, you're going to have to find a way to make do. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is you cannot move the mini on the turntable between pictures. Once it's there and you've started taking your pictures, you're going to rotate the turntable around, but you can't move the mini because if you do, it's going to confuse everything in the photogrammetry software and you won't get a good result. Here's the final product of my living bomb, and you can see it came out great. And the software did a fantastic job of bringing in and creating a 3D model. Now, I do want to point out there are a couple of things here. You might notice that right here, it's sort of white. And that's because the angles of the pictures I took didn't catch the bottom of this part of the model. You can see it a little bit in the underside here as well. And that's going to happen, but when you're in Tabletop Simulator and you're looking at the top down of everything, you have to really go out of your way to be looking for, that part of a model to even be able to see that. So, if you were worried about that, you can try to keep that in mind when you're figuring out what's the best angle to take the photos of your models from. But for the most part, you're really not going to see this at all. So this is the base model. You're going to see that the bottom of the actual base here is hollowed out. And so that's something that we're going to add in Blender in the second step, which is basing the model. But this gives us the main part of the model to move forward with. Part 2 of this tutorial talks through how to base the model in Blender. And again, this walks through all the steps to do it. The reason it does this is because when you bring in a model using photogrammetry, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfectly smooth and round. And so, in a smart way, this guide has you basically delete the base that you have on your mini and add in a nice clean one. And there's a few benefits to doing this as well. Aside from just looking better, you'll also know that in Tabletop Simulator, you have the option on any 3D model to create a color tint. And so the base option that's actually in this tutorial has a little strip along one side. And when you use your color tint in Tabletop Simulator, it actually changes the color of that strip. You don't have to use the model, the base that this tutorial suggests you use. It does have free bases, but if you have other 3D assets that you want to use as a base, you can use a different one, and I did on some of mine. And here you can see what my living bomb looks like in Blender. So when I move around, now it has a nice base on it. You can see this gray strip along the back. That's the area for this base that's going to be changed when I change my color tint in Tabletop Simulator. The black will stay black, but this very light strip on the back half will turn whatever color I have it set to. So for the Summoner class, it's sort of a magenta color. I can use the same RGB code to set this strip on the back of my mini to be the same color as the health bar and all the other colors that go along with the class. And it makes it a little bit easier to identify the minis when they're on the table because you could see exactly what's what. And, especially for a class like this where there's a whole bunch of minis on the table mixed in with the enemies, it's really easy to see what's a mini and what isn't. Part 3 of the tutorial walks through the final step of taking your 3D model and turning it into an asset that you can import to Tabletop Simulator. There's a few things that I want to call attention to within this tutorial. The first is that there's an incorrect software version listed in part 1 of the tutorial. It says to use Unity 2019.1.14F1. When I tried using that, I had errors, and I found that in part 3 of the tutorial, it actually referenced a different version, 2019.1.0F2. That's the version you should use. Second, there's something called a collider that you need to set up as part of this process. A collider is basically just an invisible mesh that determines what you can actually interact with on the model in Tabletop Simulator. So where you can click to be able to pick up the model and drop it somewhere. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. The third thing is in step 2G, it points out that whatever part of the model you have as your first object, that's the part that will get affected by Tabletop Simulator's color tint. So make sure you keep that in mind. If you want a certain part of the base to be colored, you need to make sure that that's the first part here in step 2G. Here's the example of the living bomb in the Unity Hub. And you can see as I move this around, I don't know why it's so dark in here. It doesn't come out this way on Tabletop Simulator. But when you click on it, you can see the collider that I built for this model. And the reason this is important is, beyond what I said before, it seems like in the new enhanced TTS mod for Gloomhaven in Tabletop Simulator, that once you add the health bar script to the model so that you can track the health of the object, that health bar seems to be tied to the collider of the object. So however high up that collider goes, that's where your health bar is going to be. And so you want to make sure you do a good job of setting this up so that when your health bar appears, it doesn't sink down into the model and it's not floating super high above the model so that, it doesn't even show clearly that it's the health for that model. Once you have your asset bundle exported from Unity Hub, you're ready to load into TTS Enhanced. Here I have a fresh campaign and I've set up the Summoner class to use for my example. At the time of making this video, the current version of TTS Enhanced is 1.1. I actually had a great conversation with one of the mod developers last night, and he told me that future versions will have changes to the scripts for summon standees. As long as you follow my steps, it will likely work in future versions, but some of the actual script you see in this video will likely change as the mod evolves. So let's go and actually pull in our object. So if you go to the Objects button in Components, then Custom, Asset Bundle, you're going to left click to place an asset bundle and then right click to finish your placement, and you'll get this dialog box that pops up that needs some information. From here, you can browse your local files and go up to wherever you exported your asset bundle for Unity Hub. And here you can see all my files, and here's the Living Bomb file of the Unity 3D format. But I'm not actually going to open it from here because I've already done that, and I already have these saved in my Cloud Manager. The nice thing about Steam is you can actually keep your files saved and share them with other people. So the URLs for all of my mods will be listed in the description down below in this video. If you want to use mine, feel free to. If I click on this, I can actually copy the URL, and now I'm going to go here and just paste that right in, and I'm going to create this as a figurine and import it. And here it is. Now my model's on the table, and I'm ready to start applying scripts in order to get the health bar and everything else that I want to go along with it. So to do that, I'm going to right click and summon my standee here off to the side. And there's a number of things that we're going to sort of work through as far as how scripting works, because you're going to need to probably modify some of this with your own standees. This isn't going to work just right out of the box for you. But to do that, we need to right click on the standee and go to scripting and then scripting editor. And you'll see in this box here, there's two different types of scripts. You have an LUA and a UI. Most of the things we care about are really going to be under the LUA. But what I would recommend doing is having a notepad application that you can Control A to select all, then Control C to copy. And if you go to your notepad application, you can paste it in. And I already have all of this saved that I pasted in to prepare for the video here. You'll want to do the same thing if you go to the UI for the Living Bomb. You'll want to copy that and paste that into a separate file on a notepad so that you can see everything, edit it, and copy and paste from here. So a few things that I want to call your attention to. I mentioned earlier that when you build your collider in Unity Hub, that currently is what determines where the health bar will be. But when I talked to the mod developer, he mentioned that that is something that's going to be changing in one of the next versions. So you'll want to know how you actually offset that HP bar, and you'll see that it's going to be right near the top of the LUA script. This is not currently, again, how it's being set, but in the future, this HP bar offset is what's going to control how far off the table that HP bar floats over the model. Second thing I want to call your attention to is about halfway through the script, you'll see text that looks a lot like this, and this is the script that populates and gives all the attributes for the minus and plus sign that controls the hit points for the model. The things I want to call your attention to is the position. So this first line here is for the add, so this is for adding hit points. Directly below it, there's another piece for sub, and this is for subtracting hit points. Within them, you'll see position here, and there's 3 numbers in brackets. The first number determines the offset to the left or right of the center of the standee. The second number determines the offset, how high off the table that plus or minus sign will float. And the third number is how far front or back from the center of the standee the plus or minus signs will be. This is important because, again, as I mentioned, your model's base may be higher off the table or may be bigger, and so you may need to modify some of these things. The second is the font color. So 000 translates to black, and for me, I'm going to use white, so we're going to end up changing this to 1, 1, 1. But first, actually, before I do that, there's one last thing I want to show you. which is towards the bottom of the script. It would be around line 568. It's pretty close to the bottom. You're going to see this line here that says self set color tint summon tint. This actually is creating a problem in the script when I ran it, and this needs to be removed. Not only does it need to be removed before you apply it to your new model, but you actually will need to do it on the old model before you combine states. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go into the old standee, and I'm going to go into the scripting editor, and I'm going to update the UI of that standee with my new text with that line removed. And now I can do my edits for my own standee. So again here, I'm going to go to the plus and minus, and what I want to change is this 0.04 is very close to the table. On my standee, I need it much higher. This is going to be something that's a bit of trial and error, but I already did this before. I made the video, and I know that I need it to be 0.22 off the table in order to be above the top of my standee, my standee's base. I also have a bigger base than the standee that the base cardboard cutout uses, so I want mine to be a little bit further south of the center of the model. So I'm going to increase this from minus 0.3 to minus 0.4 on both the plus and minus, and I'll kind of talk through once I actually get this on my model what that actually means and what it does. One other thing that you'll need to do is you need to name your new standee the same thing as the other standee. And I'm going to go into the scripting editor on my new standee, and I'm going to paste my LUA in here. This is my modified LUA. And I'm also going to copy and paste my UI. I don't need to modify my UI at all, but I do want to call attention to something here before we move on, which is near the top of the UI script, there's a value called rotation. And this works fine. I haven't had any issues using the rotation that's here. But when you create your model and you bring it in, if you find that, maybe your model's backwards and so you need the health bar rotated around, you can play with these numbers, again, trial and error, in order to get that working correctly for you. But now that I've added my scripts to this file, you'll notice that the health bar doesn't just show up right away, but if you copy and paste this standee, then it'll create a new one that has all the information you need. And actually, you can see here, I forgot to change the color back to white. So you can kind of make them out, but it's really hard to see. So I'm going to actually delete this. I'm going to go back to my script here. And again, I need to change the font color to 111, and that will be white. Now I've copied that again. Let's go back to the scripting editor. Need to update the LUA, and I paste that in here. And now you can see my plus and minus are white. So nice and easy to see. All right, great. So I have my new standee, I have my old one. What I can do from here is I can change the color tint if I want to. So I'm going to do that. That changes this little banner around the bottom. I mentioned that before. And again, I want to call out that the description here needs to be blank before we can actually put this into an infinite bag. When you actually click the card to spawn a model, that description needs to be blank, because part of the script will actually go through and do what it does in order to populate information about that standee. If you have a description already populated when you create the base model that's going to generate, it's going to create problems in the script. So it's really important that that be done. Now that that's done, it's time to create our states. So I like to copy my models and paste them off to the side. This way here, I have sort of different steps along the way if I need to backtrack without having to use the rewind button if I make a mistake. You'll notice when I copied them, it actually added descriptions back to each of the standees. So I'm going to remove those again. And in order to create the states, you're going to hold in Control and select each one. And if you're selecting multiple models, the order that you select them will be the order that the states are laid out, with the exception being whichever one you right-click on to create states, that will be state number 1. So here you can again see, here I have my model and this is my state and I am ready to go. So let me copy and paste this off to the side just so again I have a completed version of it. But I don't want to play around by toggling the states right now because again their description is set to 0 and I don't want the script to trigger and start adding the description in. So the next thing I need to do now that I have this model and I'm ready to go here is I need to search for what's called the bag of summons, and that's a hidden bag that the mod has that has all of these tokens in them. But I need to edit it, and the mod developers did this really neat thing where they they kind of hit it off to the corner here. So to find it, because it's locked and it's hidden, I actually need to go to modding, and I need to look for the bag of summons. And once I click on that, you'll notice that something highlighted blue over here. Once it's highlighted, now I can go over here and what I need to do is right click and go to toggle, and I'm going to change lock, and I'm going to change drag selectable. And now what that allows me to do is this token, if I hold on to it, now bring this over, and this is where again all of the mods are. Or rather all the summons are. So now I have this token and I can drag out a bag of 48 summons. And again, this is a bag that has all the different summons in it. If I go to search, I can see all of the different summon tokens and I want to look for the one that I'm replacing. So I'm going to go down to the living bomb here. I'm going to pull out the one that I want to change. This pulls out an infinite bag for the living bomb. This isn't a token like the other ones. So again, it's like a shell game here with a Russian nesting doll. So I have my infinite living bomb spawner here. And what I want to do is update this infinite bag. So to do that, I want to right click on it and hit reset. And that means that this item now is ready to accept a new model as its base standee. So to do that, I'm going to drag this standee and drop it into that infinite model, and now it's updated. Now that that's done, I'm going to right click my spawner here, and I'm going to search, and I'm going to drag this and drop it in. So now I have my new spawner within this bag. And I need to take the main token that had this bag in it, and I need to reset that. Once that's reset, I can take this little chip, drop it in there, and now this bag of summons has a fully updated version that I can pick this up. I can bring this back up to the corner, keep it out of line of sight, drop it, and I can go ahead and remove the drag and lock it. And now we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now that that's done, watch what happens when I right click the card here. Here's my new standee. Got hit points. It works. I can go to my state. I can change it to state 2. I can do the same thing. Or I can go back to state 1. And I can spawn as many of these as I want. So I'm done. I have my new model. It's all set up. It's ready to go, and everything is working great. I don't need these anymore. And everything is perfect. Now I have no idea if people are going to find this video interesting or helpful. And I don't know if this is the type of video that you would want to see going forward. So if you liked it, or if you found it interesting, or if it was helpful in any way, please leave a comment down below and let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, and if you want to see more of my videos when I post them, please subscribe. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.